Hi, I am Astrid, an adult services librarian here at the Batavia Public Library. And together with two fellow librarians, Christine and Laura, we will show you 3 ways to track your reading. Let me share my screen. Okay. You can get organized and easily find what you've read and what you want to read next. There are 3 ways to keep track of your reading. In part 1, I will show you how to do it the old-fashioned way with pen and paper. In part 2, Christine will demonstrate the use of electronic sources. And in part 3, Laura will introduce you to Goodreads, a website that you can use. A lot of librarians use Goodreads. Why should you track your reading in an organized way? You can find what you recorded for a specific book you have read. You can keep track of titles in a series, which is especially helpful if it is a long series or the author writes several series you read. For example, James Patterson comes to mind, or Nora Roberts. You get more value out of your reading. You can make notes, you can analyze your reading, you can write reviews, and you can rate your books. And you can see what you really, really like to read and what you don't seem to enjoy as much. Several years ago, somebody asked me if I read science fiction, and I said, no, I don't ever read science fiction. But then when I started to actually track my reading, I found out that yes, indeed, I have read several books that were classified as science fiction, and I actually liked a few of them too. You can set reading goals and challenges. For example, if you always read 50 books a year, you might want to up that to 55 books a year. You can set yourself a challenge. If you say, I don't ever read romance novels, maybe your challenge is to read a couple of romance novels a year, just for the heck of it. You can record book recommendations and keep a to-be-read list. Now, how do you keep track? If you use pen and paper and you just make yourself little notes on little slips of paper, not very helpful. I seriously doubt it's going to be easy for you to find that book you read, like, 3 years ago, or the place where you wrote down that book that you absolutely want to read next. We provide you here with 3 options. I'm going to cover pen and paper. You have reading logs that are available online, or you can purchase them. They are reading journals. And they even have some bookshelf lists where you can actually just write down on the spine the title of the book. I don't know how useful those are, but they are available. In part 2, Christine will cover reading log templates using Excel spreadsheets. And in part 3, Laura will cover Goodreads. All right, let's start with part 1, pen and paper, the old-fashioned way for people who do not want to power up an electronic device. There are some options. Usually people come in and they will keep track of their reading in little notebooks. They're easy to use, they're widely available. However, they don't have much of a flexibility. They are usually, they have them listed chronologically, which is not very helpful. They have very limited organization. If you have 5 subjects in a notebook, you can organize it a little bit more than if you just had a notebook with 1 subject, but they also have limited capacity. You have a fixed number of pages. Then there are the reading journals and logs. They do offer varying levels of writing prompts, which are your pre-printed section headings, for example. They have simple title and author of the book to more complex prompts like sample discussion questions or spot to enter memorable quotes. They do have, again, limited flexibility, limited organization, limited capacity. Usually they're only available online or from bookstores. You're not going to find these at Walmart or Target. We did include a couple of resources, Bustle.com and bookriot.com. Both of them have listings of reading journals that you might want to peruse and just see if there's anything that you like. Or you can just simply go to Google and put in reading logs for adults for suggestions. There are many reading logs where you have templates that are available online for free download, and then you can print them out. Just make sure you include the adults, because if you just put in reading logs, you're going to get an awful lot of search results that include, third grade reading and a lot of stuff that are meant for school kids. Another option is to use a binder. Now, binders are flexible and they are easy to organize with tabs, dividers, different colored paper. They are readily available in various colors and sizes. They hold a little or a lot. You can put in 2 pages, you can put in 21 pages, you can put in 158 pages. The contents can be arranged as needed, and then they can also be rearranged. And it's easy to transfer sheets to a bigger binder or a newly created binder as needed. If one binder is full, instead of adding another binder, you might just want to get a bigger binder. Of course, they are also more utilitarian than pretty, but you can spiff them up easily by using funky colors. And you can also personalize the cover and spine inserts. There's another option. Index cards. Like binders, they are flexible and easy to organize with tabs, dividers, different colored cards. They are readily available in different sizes and colors, and depending on the size of the box, they can hold a little or a lot. You can also arrange them and rearrange them as needed, and it's easy to transfer cards to a bigger box or a newly created box as needed. And you can use them as a bookmark for the book you're reading. On the other hand, a card does not hold as much information as a full sheet of paper, unless you use bigger cards and you write smaller. However, most people may not use up a whole full sheet of paper to fill out their cards. So a small one might just work for you. If you find that you always need more space to write on, just go to a bigger card. And don't drop them. If you drop them, the contents may fall out and then they make a bit of a mess. I speak from experience. Now, don't forget about your writing utensil. Pencils let you erase. Okay, if you find that you always seem to be doing a lot of erasing, you might want to just go with a pencil. But anything you enjoy writing with is fine. You can use blue pens, purple markers, black ink, crayons, if you must, felt tip, whatever suits your fancy and makes you happy. If you find a good pen, keep it. You won't regret it. Always keep a good pen with you. You will never know when your inspiration might strike. I picked up a purple pen once that somebody left behind, and I had that thing for 2 years. And then the ink ran out, and I was rather upset. Okay, now that you've decided what to use, what do you write down? If you use a reading journal or reading logs, you just follow the prompts provided. You don't really have to think. You just fill out whatever is pre-printed on there. If you start with a blank paper or index card, then you will have to create your own prompts. Always include a title and an author. I would also highly recommend to always include a date started and finished, or at minimum include the month and year you read a book, and include a rating. You pick the system. You can use a star rating, 4 stars, 5 stars, whatever. You can use numbers on a scale from 1 to 10. This is a 7.5, for example. You can also use words. I myself have a spreadsheet where I keep my rating in words. I have highly recommend, so-so, no good, ending issue, did not finish. Those are my personal ratings. You can do whatever feels right for you. Also, if your book is part of a series, the series title and what number in the series should be included. You may actually want to keep all books in a series under the series title instead of in the individual titles. But you can do whatever you want. There's other information that you might like to record. The genre, for example, mystery, romance, horror. Of course, if all you read is romance, there's no reason to include a genre. But most people tend to read more than one genre, so you might want to include that. If you read a lot of nonfiction, for example, you want to have categories: history, self-help, biography, memoir. Of course, if all you ever read is biography and memoirs, you will not need this. You also want to include the format. Now, if you only read print books, you don't need to include a format. But if you sometimes will read ebooks and sometimes will listen to books on audio, you may want to include that. The number of pages also would be helpful. You might find out that you never seem to read any books that are more than 350 pages long. Okay. You also want to include a summary. How brief or extensive that summary is, that is up to you. It helps in remembering who the killer was in that great mystery you read 2 years ago. I personally always include a summary because I can never remember who killed whom and how a book ended. You also want to do a little review. Just write down, what did you think? You want to basically write down here why you gave it the rating that you did. Why did you make it a 3-star and not a 4-star or a 2-star? You also might want to record your reaction. Did it make you laugh? Were you bored stiff? Did you think, oh, this is the best book ever written? What was your reaction? You might want to include appeal factors. Was it fast-paced? Was it heartwarming? Did the lush writing appeal to you, or the sarcastic tone? And who recommended it? Do you always seem to like what your neighbor Sally recommends, but you seem to never finish the books from neighbor Betty? Well, it might help you in deciding that next time neighbor Betty recommends a book, you may not even want to bother with it. And anything else you might think might be helpful. The best cover ever, the greatest quotes. Personally, this is my best cover ever. I love that. I don't even remember much about the book, but I do remember the cover. This is a great cover. I actually did this book in a book discussion because I like the cover, believe it or not. And for quotes, you can't go wrong, for example, with Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman's Good Omens. They have the best quotes. Now, this is just something for yourself that you might want to write down. For example, the best cover, that is how I started out my summary. It starts out, best cover ever. And then I wrote a little summary. Now, how do you create your own prompts? First thing, and this is the most important thing, you have to think about it. Decide how you want your tracking to be organized. Take a blank sheet of paper or an index card, whichever way you want to go, and place your prompts or headings where you want them. Try different arrangements. Consistency is key. Keep whatever format you have finally decided on and stick with it on each record to make it uniform. Of course, if after doing this for 10, 20 books, you find it's not really working for you, well, then you can always redo it. There are always second chances. You can use main categories, then have a subcategory within each category, whatever works for you. Fiction or nonfiction, doesn't make a difference. Just decide what it is that you want to do. You can have a subcategory within each subcategory, of course. Organize your pages or cards the way it works best for you. If you use genres, you can organize them by title or author within each genre, for example, or you can just organize them by ratings. Different ways of doing it. You can also use colors to denote genres, or you can make a, for every year, have a different color. Whatever else you want to stand out, you could do by color. For listing titles, you might want to drop the article or put it at the end. The Lost Apothecary, for example, becomes Lost Apothecary, the, and An Unfinished Life becomes Unfinished Life, an. We have a listing at work for all sorts of titles, and we got rid of the because when we look up articles, when we look up titles, and then you have there are a ton of book titles that start with the word the or a or n. But, if you want to keep those, go ahead. For the author's name, use the last name first, followed by the first name. And you can organize what you read by your ratings. Put all the 5-star titles together, organized by the way you choose. Then you might want to continue with the 4-star books, or the loved it books are followed by the liked it books, etc. Whatever you decide, you're in charge. Titles that you want to read. If you have a title that you want to read, write the title and author and whatever other information you have on a binder sheet or index card, and do one of the following. It's your choice. If you have a lot of to be read titles, and by a lot, I mean a lot, I think I'm now up to like 200 titles. I will be long dead before I have read all of them, but I do have a long list. Keep those title records in a separate binder or box, and then interfile them with regular book records after reading them. It just makes things much easier. Or if you don't have that many, you can always file those records at the back or the front of your binder or box. And you can file records at the back or front of each category you use too, for example. You can also interfile to be read records where they will eventually end up, but you would need to mark them so that they are easy to recognize. I would suggest maybe do a paper clip or something so you know right away, this is a book I haven't read yet. For some closing notes. Keeping track of your reading by organizing it can be a very satisfying activity and makes you feel accomplished. Organization and consistency are key. I can't stress this enough. Organize it and stay with it. Be consistent in what you do. If you sometimes, put the author first on that index card, and then at other times you put the title first, it won't let you find it as easy as if you stay consistent. Be as creatively simple or complex as you see fit. And to avoid having to create your own prompts, you can always use a reading journal or logs, but be aware that you will give up some flexibility, organization, and capacity by doing so. As an alternative, you can combine the pre-printed reading logs that you printed off the internet and the binder method. Just 3-hole punch the logs and use them in a binder. Then you do not have to write your own prompts. But using a pen and paper gives your tracking more of a feel than doing it electronically. But it does take longer to find a particular item. And for tracking your reading electronically, watch part 2 with Christine.